All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Friday, September 6th, and we are 24 hours away. Well, technically, Texas will have been playing for about an hour at this point in time by the time this is posted. But it is Michigan Day. We're within the 24-hour period, so I guess it's Michigan Day. Jacob Jimerson, Tanner Carlson here for you. This is All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Media. And today is the Scouting Report Day. Every single Friday, we are just breaking down the Longhorns' opponent. Defenses that we've seen. And as the season goes on, obviously, we're going to have more information, more scouting opportunities to actually see these teams. We're going to have a better understanding of who these teams are. Again, probably a pretty vanilla showing by Texas's scheme, also compared to Michigan having to probably open up the playbook a little bit more than they wanted to against Fresno State, but I doubt it was anything real groundbreaking. Jake, this entire 30 minutes is just going to be Texas, Michigan. We've probably got 2 hours worth of talking points that we got to fit into 30 minutes here. So let's not waste any more time with the pleasantries. What do you got on Michigan this week?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you got to talk about with Michigan is that defense. This is going to be, in my opinion, the best defense Texas will see all year, even over Georgia. You have two defensive tackles that are both going to be, NFL players, even first round pick type players. And that's going to be, we've kind of preached it throughout this week already, but watching that battle at the line of scrimmage is just going to be such an important factor in who wins this game. Which offensive line is able to handle the other's defensive front the best, which is kind of a good place to start this whole conversation, because that's why I think there's different paths to victories for each team, because Michigan is going to look to run it heavy against a Texas front that is not proven at stopping the run yet. They've only gone against Colorado State. Colorado State did get a 100-yard rusher, but that was on 25 carries. And also, you had probably a lot more players cycling in that game than you're going to see against Michigan. But, losing Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, how is this Texas team going to be able to stop the run in their first true test? And so that's obviously going to be the key to watch. And then on the flip side, you have a very experienced Texas offensive line coming in, but this is going to be a different monster of a front than they've seen since maybe Alabama last year. And I think this front is better than that Alabama front last year. And so how are they going to do? Is Texas going to be able to run the ball at all? Are they, most importantly, in my opinion, be able to protect Quinn Ewers to give him time to throw the ball when they are in passing situations? Because I do think we're going to see some 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, hopefully not much worse than that, but I do think we're going to see several of those in this game. And Texas is going to have to convert a couple to win this game.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting matchups. One matchup in particular that I am just eager to see, just because it's going to be great football, is Will Johnson against these Texas wide receivers. Who is he? Is he going to shadow? Is he going to travel along with Isaiah Bond? Is he just going to say, all right, Bolden, you're over here. Golden, you're over here. Bond, you're over here. Cook, you're over here. And I'm going to lock you down. So it'll be very interesting. I'm really interested to see what those matchups look like and how Quinn tries to look off a corner the caliber of Will Johnson. Probably, potentially, maybe the best defender Texas is going to face all year, at least in the secondary, I would say.
Yeah, I do think he is the best secondary. He's going to be a first-round pick at corner next year for sure.
He might be the first cornerback taken in the draft.
Yeah, and if you watch his film, he looks like Patrick Surtain. I believe he's 6'2". He's lengthy. He's fast. He has great football IQ. I wouldn't want to be throwing the ball his way very much in this game, quite honestly. But I am curious to see what Michigan does with him. Is he going to follow Bond? Is he going to kind of just play on his side to start? And then if you have one Texas receiver starting to take over, then he'll start shadowing. It's going to be interesting to see how Michigan uses him, because if someone's open, you throw him the ball, but I wouldn't necessarily be including Will Johnson in on my first 2 reads, because we saw it last week. He had a pick 6 that put away that game for good for Michigan. And you certainly do not want to give Michigan any defensive touchdowns in this game. And limiting turnovers is going to be another one of those really key areas that decides whether Texas can go in the big house and walk away with a win.
And I don't think that Quinn Ewers has ever been the quarterback, at least not in my opinion, that has ever shied away from tight coverage. He throws in tight windows. He gives his wide receivers a chance. He goes for the 50-50 balls all the time. But with Will Johnson over there, even whenever your receiver looks to be a little bit wide open, he's not. He's baiting you into throwing it to him. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he will pick it off, and he will take it to the house. And it can change the entire outcome of the game and the way the game is being played and the way you're going to approach things from that point on. The pressure, I also think Texas has got to keep Ewers on his feet, and he cannot be under duress the entirety of this game. We saw that in the playoff game against Washington a season ago, where Washington was able to apply pressure to Ewers in that first half and make him really uncomfortable. And the offense just never could really get any sort of rhythm. Michigan is capable of applying that type of pressure with guys like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant.
Especially interior pressure. That's where Quinn really starts to struggle and his passing rating starts to go down. Now, granted, we haven't seen it yet this year with an improved Quinn Ewers, but is that interior pressure going to come? And if it comes, how is Quinn going to deal with it? And what is Sark going to do to try to mitigate that? Is it through RPO game? Is it through quick passes? Is it just trying to get the run game? I think how Sark adapts in this game is going to be really interesting to watch. In my opinion, one of the most important things is to not have an Oklahoma type start. You know, Quinn had, I think, 2 interceptions in the first 2 or 3 drives last year against Oklahoma. And then he went on to finish the game like 31 of 37, threw for a bunch of yards. But that start still costed them the game. At the end of the day, those turnovers were what was the difference in that game. And so even though Quinn ended up kind of lighting it up, you know, as far as after those 2 interceptions, those 2 early mistakes still cost them. And so what you don't
set the tone.
In what you mentioned, Quinn doesn't shy away from, you know, tight coverage and believing in his arm that he can make the throw. I really want to see Texas not necessarily play call risk adverse to start the game, but you need to be aware that momentum early on in this game is going to be very important. We've talked about it a lot. And what you cannot have in those first few drives is a turnover. If it's 3rd down and 12 and Quinn doesn't see anything, throw it away, take the sack, do whatever you got to do to not just give them a free turnover and give their offense that this defense should be able to shut down for Texas, especially early. Do not give them a short field to try to capture momentum and get their confidence going.
And I think you alluded to a point. You didn't hit on it a ton, but I think the coaching matchup is something that has gone severely underrated and under talked about. We've talked about the players on the field, but we haven't really talked about Coach Moore and Coach Sark, the experience that Sark now has playing in these types of games where, yes, Shamir Moore, he came in and he had that big game against Penn State a season ago. And, you know, that was a huge point when Coach Harbaugh was sidelined from coaching for a few weeks because of the sign stealing accusations and investigation going on. And Coach Moore just broke down in tears as though Coach Harbaugh just, you know, died a week ago. But no, I think having a coach that is not necessarily, this is now his team, his footprint is on the Michigan Wolverines. It's not Harbaugh's team, him taking over. How is he going to be adjusting to what Texas is throwing at him? And is Sark, he's always going to stay aggressive. I always like that about Sark, is that he is going to go forward on the 4th downs, and he's going, but again, smartly, like you said. You can't force anything early in this game. Maybe start forcing forcing it a little bit towards the second half, or whenever you start kind of realizing what their defense is trying to do. But Sark kind of has to not play conservative, but he just has to be mindful of the environment and how quickly this game can turn if things go bad early.
Almost use some of the gadget aspects of his offense, you know, having some motion, get a receiver on a jet sweep to start the game, kind of those low risk, high reward type plays. especially with some of the explosive and talent and speed that Texas has across the field on the offense. I'd like to see them trying to get to the perimeter early on in the game, whether that be through quick passes to the receiver. You got to kind of base it off what they're throwing at you, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, a couple RPOs on the first drive for Texas, kind of put Quinn in the position to kind of dictate how this is going to go. Quinn is, been in this program for 3 years now. He has the experience. And Texas does have a clear and decisive quarterback advantage in this, but to kind of take that the coaching point just a step further from what you said, I'm very curious to see the coach Sark against the Don Martindale, the defensive coordinator for Michigan. I'm very excited to watch these two spar off because I think Martindale is one of the best, if not the best, defensive coordinators in all of college football. And I think obviously Sarkisian is one of the best offensive minds in all of football and one of the best play callers as well. I'm very excited to see how these two not only come out with their initial game plans, but then how they adjust based off the looks that each other give. I expect to see things change a lot throughout the game on both sides of the ball as needed based on how the flow of the game is going.
It'll be a fun chess match because you're going to have points where Michigan's defense is going to win a few sets. Texas's offense is going to get some big plays and win a few sets, and they're going to drive down the field. And Michigan, how are you going to see that back and forth, and who gets really the final say will probably win this game. I know we're talking a lot about Michigan's defense, Texas's offense, but that is, I think, where this game is going to rely a lot of, unless Michigan's offense just shows up and they've established the run and they look like they're a well-oiled machine, then Texas could really be in trouble if they're not prepared in terms of stopping the run or anything like that. But staying on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan real quickly with Quinn Ewers, where's a weak point? Can Texas maybe attack their safeties?
Yeah, you look at Michigan, they're replacing 3 out of the 5 starting secondary members. Obviously, Will Johnson, one of the returners. And then you also have safety Makari Page back there. I lost the name for a second. Makari Page is the other returning starter, but wasn't one of the key Wolverines last year. He was key as a starter, but not one of the higher graded defenders. We'll actually see that in the defensive tackles. You had Kenneth Grant, who's a returning defensive tackle. He was the highest graded Michigan defender last year. And the reason we're talking about the Michigan defense so much is I think there's a lot more to break down. I think the game plan is pretty obvious against the Michigan offense, but to your point, that is how I think you attack Michigan. I think you attack them in the pass game early with those intermediate passes that Quinn excels at, and trying to attack those safeties, attack the corners that aren't named Will Johnson, and try to go from there, because you have 5-6 receivers you can throw out there that all have speed and the ability to get open. You don't have to attack Will Johnson. You can attack elsewhere. And I think that's where Texas can really get the offense going early, is if they can have some success through the air. It'll kind of slow down those defensive tackles, slow down the edges, slow down the linebackers, and then they'll be able to attack with a little bit of a running game. I still think running the ball is going to be few and far between as far as success goes.
I think one thing that I really want to see this Texas offense exploit is, the seam over the middle. I think the tight ends are going to play. I think Gunnar Helm is going to have, if Texas has success, is going to have a big game. I'm really excited to see what these tight ends can do, but just seams over the middle, kind of in between that soft space between the linebacker and the safety. And Quinn is really good at hitting the middle of the field right there. And then even crossing routes and mesh routes, and get these guys, if they're in man coverage, get them bumping into each other, get them chasing some of these wide receivers over the middle of the field. I think that's where Texas is going to have to find success in the passing game, is that middle of the field, intermediate passing game between the deep ball and those short routes, because Michigan's speed, they're so fast sideline to sideline that they can easily come up and make plays on those gadget plays, on a quick screen. They'll read those quickly and they'll make a play pretty quick. Now, yes, you have to have those in there so you can open up that back into the field. But I think that's where Texas is going to find a lot of its bread and butter, at least in the passing game, if they have success. And again, somewhat find a chance to establish the run with those running backs, Jake. That's where CJ Baxter, I think, really hurts, not in the run game, but in pass protection.
Yeah, pass protection from the backs is going to be really interesting to watch in this game because Baxter was your best back in pass pro, without a doubt. I don't think you're going to want Gibson out there as a freshman trying to pass block in the big house in his second ever game. Uh, you know, Weisner is a little bit undersized as far as not that that can stop a guy from being able to block or the willingness to block. I know he has the willingness to block, but when you got a 330-pound defensive tackle coming your way, I'm not sure Weisner's who you want out there. And Jaden Blue, he exceeds in the pass catching game, and maybe that's how Texas tries to attack. Is maybe it's putting a Juan Davis in the backfield, a Gunnar Helm in the backfield, to do some of the blocking and have Jaden Blue out in the quick passing game and not rely on those backs to be in the pass pro.
Yeah.
But kind of to your point on the seam, could this be an Amari Niblack game? Could this
I would
be a
love to
game
see
where
that.
he has some big plays? I think he was a little quiet in that Colorado State game. I don't think they really needed him to do anything. I think they have some plans for him up their sleeves that they haven't showed yet, because we saw how dynamic he was as a pass catcher in that Alabama-Texas game last year. I kind of like Amari Niblack to catch a 40-plus yard type play in this game. I think he's going to provide some impact.
He can fill that JT Sanders role better than Gunnar Helm, but Gunnar Helm, I believe, is going to be, I mean, he is tight end one, and he will be kind of the security blanket for Ewers. But I like the Niblack, mixing him in, putting two tight ends out there, and kind of exploiting the middle of the field. All right, let's switch the side of the ball, Jake. Let's talk about Michigan and their offense. They're two fire-powered offensive players, Donovan Edwards and Loveland, the tight end. Talk a little bit about what kind of problems they will give to Texas.
Yeah, a lot of people look at Edwards' stat line from last week and go, wow, he averaged, I think it's 2.7 yards per carry. He only had 27 yards rushing, and say, what's wrong with him this year? Well, he was inconsistent last year, if you really go back and look. But one thing he was consistent at was every single big game Michigan had, he produced, including in the playoff run, obviously, which is what propelled him to being on the cover with Quinn Ewers, which, by the way, this is we have two of the players on the college football cover premiering in this game on Saturday. And so I think Edwards is still going to be, you got to key in on him. Stopping that run is going to be the key. And then in the passing game, I say make the receivers beat you. Make sure that Loveland isn't able to just catch these 10 to 12-yard passes, kind of that Jason Witten type zone, to reference a Cowboy. Have that type of game where he goes for 110, 120 yards receiving. That's where I think Texas could really get into trouble, is Michigan starting to run the ball. Then they get play action. They start getting the tight end open in the middle. And then all of a sudden you look up and Michigan scored 3 offensive touchdowns. It's the third quarter and your offense is struggling and you're down 21-10. That is not a position that the Longhorns want to be in on the road.
Oh, no, because Michigan playing from ahead is where they have to play and succeed in this game. If you get Michigan playing from behind and they're forced to kind of pass the ball even on shorter yardage situations, or you get them behind the chains and give them a second and long or a 3rd and 9 where they're putting in a pass situation, that's where you want them to be offensively for this Texas defense. Because if they're able to, even if it's 3rd and 2 and they don't convert it, they will go for it on a 4th and 1 because they believe in that offensive line. They believe in their running backs to get that 1 yard. But you want them to be able to be put in a situation where they're not necessarily comfortable in. And yes, I know that's kind of obvious to say, but with some teams like Texas, even if it's 3rd and 9, you're still not 100% confident that this isn't going to be a completed first down.
And if you're Texas, you're still being aggressive. Your offensive mindset on 3rd and 9, Sarkisian is never thinking, well, let's not mess up here and just punt and play the field position game. Michigan might think that a little bit if they're in a 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12 type situation. But if you look at, we've talked a lot about being worried about Michigan being able to run the ball against Texas, but I will say this Michigan offensive line is not what they were a year ago. This is kind of a new offensive line. kind of patchwork. They got some guys playing out of position. I do think Texas can have a lot of success in stopping the run, especially with the speed they have at linebacker. For me, it's all going to come down to, can the defensive tackles hold up the offensive line, allowing the linebackers, Anthony Hill and Binda, to kind of play a little bit free and really attack those running backs, because they certainly have the speed to control Michigan's run game. To me, it's all about, can Michigan get going downhill in between the tackles. If Texas stops that, I think Texas's defense is going to have a fantastic game. And I think they do have the ability to do it, because this is not the Michigan offensive line from last year.
No, it's not. And speaking on that offensive line, who they're going to be facing on the Texas defensive line, where does Texas have success? I know we've talked about the defensive tackles, Sweat, Murphy. They're not there. They're not coming out to help you out either. You've got edge rushers, however, and I think Michigan really wants to power in between the tackles, but I think if your edge rushers can make that pocket and put whatever pressure they can on the outside, seal those edges off in favor of the Longhorns, they can definitely find success somewhere. Who needs to have a big game on that defensive line?
I think there's 3 key edges for this game, and it's not going to be some of the sexier names that fans want to see as far as a Trey Moore. I think this is a game where Trey Moore might see the lowest amount of snaps he's going to see all season. He's not inept against the run. He can play the run, but I would rather see an Ethan Burke out there, a Justice Finkley, a Baron Sorrell. Those are guys who all excel against the run. Obviously, Ethan Burke brings something as a pass rusher, but Finkley is a run game specialist, and I think we're going to see him early and often in this game. I think Baron Sorrell, he's a little bit of a combo. He's got some pass rush to him, but he's also fantastic against the run. I think you're going to see a lot of him. You're going to see a lot of Ethan Burke. And Colton Vasek is another guy that we might see a little bit more of this week, because I know they really like what he brings to the table and stopping the run. I think we're going to see a lot less of Colin Simmons, only in, third down, clear passing situations. And then at defensive tackle, I think we're going to see a lot of, obviously, Alfred Collins. Broughton kind of struggled against the run against Colorado State. I wouldn't be surprised to see him a little less and see a guy like Ben Norton out there, who's just big body that can take up a lot of space, isn't going to get moved very easily. I think you're going to see some different personnel in this game specifically that we're not going to see as the season goes along and you play kind of more of those standard type offenses. I think we're going to see different personnel for this game, for the specific matchup.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I think another player that is going to have to play huge and is a very, very good run defender is David Binda. I think he does a great job from the linebacker position of getting in the backfield. And I think we're going to see a lot more of LaFau play some valuable minutes in this game. I think an Anthony Hill is obviously going to be out there. He is your stud linebacker. But I think you play 3 linebackers a little bit more in this game. You're going to have some of those bigger bodies. I'd like to see all 3 of them out on the field together, teaming up and trying to stop this run and playing that 4-3 defense, having, 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers out there, bring a safety into the box as an extra guy on those automatic rundowns that you feel like Michigan is going to try to establish the run, especially early on in this game. There's no reason why they shouldn't be trying to load the box. Now, if you get hit over the top, but I think the wide receivers at Michigan do not match up well against the corners at Texas. I think the Texas corners can lock them down man-to-man on their own without the safety help as often as they maybe normally would against a better receiving core.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael Taft kind of dropping down and doing a single high coverage type deal with the safeties. Jelani McDonald's another one that you could see kind of drop into the box looking to stop the run. And to your point, with 3 linebackers, one of the guys that they look to go to for that third linebacker spot is actually Trey Moore. And that's where I think Trey Moore is going to play the majority of his snaps in this game, is going to be as an off-ball linebacker, looking to kind of close down on that run. Obviously, he has the size and the speed to do it. I think we may see a little less of Trey Moore at edge, a little bit more at that, I believe it's the Sam linebacker position where they have him. And then obviously Anthony Hill and David Binda are going to be, if Anthony Hill and David Binda aren't 2 of your top leading tacklers, I think Texas defense is probably not going to have the best day.
Unless it's an Alfred Collins or a Broughton. That's the
Yeah,
only.
unless you have a defensive tackle, we're not expecting to fill in the stat sheet, but
Yeah,
I would be shocked if that's
I
happening
would
in a good
100%
way.
agree. Yeah, yes, I 100% agree though. Now, Jake, if Texas establishes the run offensively, how are they going to have success against this Michigan defense?
Run away from the defensive tackles. I I do not want to see much inside run game in this game unless it's a draw or a trap type play or a counter. If you're trying to misdirect the tackles, I think maybe you could find a little success there. But I think Texas really needs to lean on its strength in this game. They are a faster team than Michigan. And I think they have that pretty decidedly. And so I'd really like to see use Jaden Blue, get him on the edge, get him behind those two dominant tackles that you have in Cam Williams and Kelvin Banks, and run right behind him and pull the guards. Kind of like we saw several of those plays against Colorado State where you're pulling the center and the guard. There was one play in particular where Jake Majors, and I believe it was Cole Hudson, got upfield. Cam Williams on the backside got
Yeah,
upfield, and it was just as an offensive line enjoyer, it was beautiful. It was absolute art. And I think that's going to be the key for Texas to get any type of run game going, is going to be kind of use some of these power concepts and getting outside of the edge and using those tackles they have versus trying to just pound it down their throat with the interior offensive line blocking what is essentially two NFL ready linemen.
yeah, no, and I would completely agree with that, Jake. As we decide to start wrapping up the show here at the 26-minute mark, you have in our notes here, both teams have a clear path to victory. What do you mean by that? And touch a little bit on each team's path to victory.
Michigan's path to victory is, I think, the clearest in this game. Run the football well. If they're averaging 4.5 yards a carry plus, they are going to win. They're going to have a very good chance to win this football game. And then defensively for them, it's just play Michigan football. I mean, their identity has been defense going on for years now, and that's not changing. They have the same defensive coordinator. They have the same ludicrous amount of talent on the defensive side of the ball. And for them, it's just play Michigan football on the defensive side and really play Michigan football on the offensive side with running the ball. But I think it's almost a little bit more extreme than last year because J.J. McCarthy was a capable passer. I'm not sure they have that this year. So for Michigan, run the football, play Michigan defense. For Texas, stop the run. If they stop the run, I don't see how Michigan scores very many points in this game. And then offensively, keep Michigan off balance. And that doesn't have to mean running the football consistently. It can mean with the RPO game, with quick passes, with some quick screens. We know Sark has a lot of creative screens. That's a great way to keep a defense off balance and almost serves as an extension of the run game. So I think that's kind of the key for the offense, is keep them off balance, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to just run it down their throat, averaging 4.5 yards a carry. It can be through screens, draws, counters, sweeps, quick passing game, RPOs, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and Jake, let's go ahead and make our final predictions for this Texas-Michigan game. Now, the Texas Longhorns, number 3 team in the country, traveling to Ann Arbor at Michigan, number 10 team in the country. This is College game day. This will be an 11 o'clock kickoff. The line is Texas by a touchdown and a half. I don't like that very much. And then the over-under is 42.5. Jake, give your thoughts on those. And then a final prediction.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if my final, because I do think the over is definitely a possibility in this game, especially as long as rain stays away. There is a 25% chance of rain. If it rains in this game, I become much more scared for Texas. I think a rain game suits Michigan great, but I do like Texas in this game. I hate that spread. I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole. My final score prediction, I guess I'm going to take the over. And I think Texas is going to walk away with a win, but I think it's going to be 27-24. I am not as confident as some of the media and some of the other Longhorn fans I've seen on social media that think this is going to be a 2-3 possession type game. I just don't see it. I think people are really underrating Michigan just because of a week one sloppy performance, which they still dominated at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're right. They still won by 3 touchdowns, I think, or something along those lines. So
30 to 10, I believe.
yeah. So I don't like the line of 7.5 for Texas either. I think I'm actually going to take the under as well. I think this is going to be a low scoring, sloppy game. It's not going to feel very pretty at times for Texas. I think fans are going to get probably a little frustrated. I think that's the game Michigan wants to play, but I think Texas overcomes at the end of it. And I'm going to say Texas 24, Michigan 20. And I think it's just going to be kind of a knockout, ugly, drag them out fight. I think Michigan's going to have a final drive of the game down 24-20 with a chance to win that thing. But they're gonna get stopped. Texas comes up with the final stop on a 4th down and kneel it out. But yeah, I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be a hard fight, and I think both teams are going to feel it that Sunday morning. They're not going to be feeling too good.
To extend on my prediction just real quick before we wrap up, give me Burt Auburn 42-yard field goal to win the game.
All right, I
That's
like
how
it.
Texas wins this. It's going to echo the Rose Bowl we saw
I love
back in 2004, a
I love
last
it.
second field goal and a big time Texas win. Hopefully we're having a celebratory podcast tomorrow.
Yeah. And we will end things off with a predicted game-winning field goal going back to the 2004 Rose Bowl game. Well, Jake, great talking to you, man. We will see you tomorrow. We are going to have an immediate reaction after the game, so stick with that. Look for it as soon as that game is over. We're going to start recording and getting into work. So for Jacob Jennerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. This is All In Horns. Hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.